Cool, cool, cool. All right. Well, hi, everyone. It's Shane here. And on behalf of the iMoot team, just want to welcome you to this session. Hope you've enjoyed the iMoot. We're coming almost to the end of it. But in this session, we have Vinny Stocker. I get the great privilege of working with Vinny on a day-to-day basis, and certainly appreciate his wealth of knowledge, not just in Moodle, but in e-learning and learning in general as well. And so Vinny's presenting today on teaching with Moodle. Vinny, so just want to say thank you for your time and all your work with the iMoot, and very much looking forward to your session now. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. So just to kick off, let's do a quick poll, just so I get an idea of how you're using Moodle. So this whole presentation was aimed basically at teachers. That's how it was advertised. That was my target audience. Yeah, I'm sure everybody is all of the above at some point, but if you can pick what your main one is, that will just give me an idea how to kind of pitch this a little bit. So welcome to all the people that are just joining. Lots of familiar faces. It's quite a who's who of iMoot here. Just let the poll run for just a few more seconds, see if we can capture. So pick an option. Which is your main role? Okay, let's go with that, and I'll publish the results. So we've got 6 others. That's probably the people that have multiple roles and do bits of development and things like that, maybe. So we've got a couple of admins. We've got 1 teacher. So who, I will pick on people, and this is going to be audience participation. So who out of the people in the room is the teacher? Just say hi in chat. Let me know who the teacher is, because this is basically for you. This whole presentation is aimed. Kim, okay, cool. So let's go. So yeah, as I said, this presentation is really aimed at teachers. And obviously all of us can take something away from it. There will be some questions and activities, because my background's teaching. That's my along with Moodle, that's one of my passions. And so when I tend to present, I always come at it from a teaching and learning angle, and try and actually do what I say and come up with interactive stuff. So there will be some bits where you can participate. So I'm Vinny. My contact details, if anybody wants to say hi, I know nearly all of you anyway. So as again, coming from a teaching perspective, I like to have some big ideas and some learning intentions for these presentations. So what I want you to be able to do by the end of this session, my aim is that you'll be able to take some of these, take some traditional teaching and learning. I put methodologies, which is a big capture for everything. So traditional teaching and learning activities, methods, practices, and try and get them into your Moodle courses and a Moodle context. So yeah, if you've got comments and ideas and things like that, throw them in the chat. It's certainly not going to be a chalk and talk style presentation, so if somebody puts anything interesting in the chat, I'm most likely going to go off on tangents, and we'll kind of try and keep it a bit interactive. Okay, so let's kick it off. So how can we implement some traditional classroom activities in Moodle? So I've got a number of slides. We've got 30 in total. Most of those are picking specific ideas and looking at how we can do them. So personalized learning is something that as teachers we try to get into our teaching. So that comes under various different titles. So obviously there's two main things that we can do for that, which is a lesson activity. Within the lesson activity, we can have branching structures, we can have questions, so we can take the users off to different areas of content, different links, different support material. And we can do a similar thing on a Moodle course with conditional activities, so we can have that kind of branching structure. In fact, conditional activities will feature quite a lot in this presentation. So we can restrict access to certain activities, we can have help and support material appearing, depending on results for quizzes, scores for quizzes, or if it's a graded forum and that kind of thing. So we can have different content appearing, disappearing, and start to personalize what we're delivering to our students. If we're talking about acceleration, so if we have lots of short quizzes, we can kind of carve out a learning path that can bypass material. So creating pre-quizzes for things, if students already understand the content and are getting very high scores on the quizzes, then we can accelerate them on to new units, new topics. So all of that can be done with restricting access and conditional activities. Again, just to take it back to my my initial idea for this presentation. So this is aimed at teachers and it's aimed at people that are maybe not so familiar with using the Moodle software. So I'm expecting a lot of this to be pretty obvious to lots of the people in the room. But yeah, hopefully this will come up with some idea. Yeah, Andrew's just popped into the chat there. The hardest part is designing the pathways. Yeah, I mean, what I tend to do is just go back to pen and paper or sticky notes and things like that. You know, write out my activities, pop it up on a wall, or even spreadsheets and things like that to move things around. Maureen saying, don't assume I've been avoiding lessons. Don't avoid lessons. Love the lessons. The lesson activity needs some love, definitely. Okay, so teacher expectations. Obviously, when you're face-to-face teaching, that's a big part of your teaching and learning style. Sharing target grades with students is important. Ways that you can do that, you can have individual wiki. So one of the options on the wiki activity is that it can just be shared between the student and the teacher. So it's very useful for these private conversations. So you can share target grades, you can set expectations individually with students using wikis, or maybe an assignment that doesn't require the student to do anything. So I'm checking the file submission box and the online text box. We'll just create an assignment that the teacher can give a grade, but doesn't require the student to do anything, to submit anything. Along with some feedback and things like that. And of course, you in your gradebook in Moodle, if you are using that assignment for a target grade, you could have that in a separate category that doesn't go towards the course total, and you can call that target grade or something like that. And of course, so throughout the course of the year or however long your course is, that can be changed and updated by the teacher. So I thought that was quite a nice way of having a permanent target grade shared with the students on your course. Along with expectations is obviously as a teacher you should be expecting the students to do the work. So activity completion is a great way to monitor that. So the completion reports, you can bring up the nice tick box chart of who's done it and who hasn't done it. And if it is a quiz, then if you set a pass mark on the quiz, you can see who's completed it with a passing mark and a failing mark as well. And also linked into teacher expectations. You can obviously set those out on the course, maybe with including it in some kind of introduction video about yourself, explaining your expectations of the students, of the participants of your course. I'm coming at this from more of a high school teaching background, but some of these you can pop into working with adults and university level students as well. Okay, so teacher collaboration, which is again something that you most likely do regularly with your colleagues, is obviously to collaboratively make the courses. And I'm a huge fan of teachers working together. You know, if you've got 7 year 7 science teachers, don't give them individual Moodle courses, give them one course, set up groups properly on there so that they've got their students in different groups, and get them to collaborate on the course content, which is, in my opinion and my experience, is far easier said than done. But I think it's a valuable thing to try and push for. And of course, you know, Moodle can be used as a great platform for sharing examples of good practice, and also all of your staff PD as well. Let's have a quick go back to the chat. Some useful comments in there. Yeah, Trish, I agree. You know, if you've got these collaborative courses and you've got a teacher off ill, short term or long term, then all of those resources and materials are there for their students, and everybody else teaching the same course. It just seems crazy to me why, you know, if you've got teachers teaching the same course face to face, or, you know, the students have got to learn the same material, why not get them collaborating? So another thing that you do as a teacher is often get students setting their own targets and self-assessment. And a lot of these ideas I've kind of cribbed from John Hattie's work. I'm a huge fan of visible learning. So lots of these things that I'm touching on are things that are proven to have a large impact on pupil progress. So one of those things is getting the students to predict their grades before a test, which you could obviously do with a choice activity. You don't have to display the results, so that it doesn't have to be a public thing. With self-diagnostics of learning problems. So we can have chains of conditional activities, or the lesson activity that the student can use to kind of work out misconceptions or gaps in their knowledge. The confidence-based marking option in the quiz is something definitely I'd recommend exploring. Not for every single quiz, because I think it could get a little bit overkill. For those of you that haven't used it, or seen it. Along with putting their answers, the students have to give it a confidence rating. So whether they're 100% sure that they're correct, whether they're slightly sure, whether they're not sure at all. And Moodle does some simple calculation that skews the score that the students get for that particular question. Obviously, this is all documented on Moodle.org. So for instance, if a student gets a multiple choice question wrong and says that they're very, very confident in that answer, then they get penalized for it. They actually get a negative grade, which is something obviously important if you're working with doctors or airline pilots. When they come up with an answer, you want to make 100% sure that they know the correct answer. So that's quite a nice thing, and you get some analysis from that, and you can obviously share that with the students as well. Within the workshop activity, there's a nice self-assessment part of it. Sorry, just doing my hair. There's a nice self-assessment part of it, as well as doing some peer assessment of each other. One of the options is that you can get the students to self-assess, and obviously that's based on the rubric that you've shared with them. So when you're setting up the workshop activity, you put up it's not actually called a rubric in it, it's like a marking guide. But yeah, one of the options, the students can use that and then go back and assess their own submissions. So that's quite a nice thing. And you could actually use the workshop to focus more on that self-assessment rather than the peer assessment aspect of the workshop. And then, of course, back to the wikis or blogs for student reflections on their learning. Yeah, Christina's just put, sometimes I find setting up and managing groups can get a bit too stressful for teachers to handle. Yeah, I agree. And that's why it's important to have your site admin do all that kind of thing, either through cohorts or some other enrollment method. Most places will have all of this data in some other system, so use it. Leverage off that and get Moodle to automatically set the groups up for the teachers. So group activities, again, something that we do in our daily teaching. Two main things that I came up with for that. So obviously assignment, you can submit in groups. And of course you don't have to stick to whatever groups you've set up in Moodle for your teaching. You can create extra groups within Moodle, or even groups of groups, groupings. So yeah, assignment, you can get the students to create some group assignments and submit those. And also in the database, database activities, fantastically flexible. So you could create whatever your database activity is, whether they're creating something outside of Moodle and then submitting it into the database, or I don't know, taking photos, recording videos, whatever the learning activity is, they can upload it into the database activity. And you could just manually create some filters in that so that they can choose their group and upload it to the group. And then of course you can also have the database activity graded if you want to. Andrew's just put, what is the easiest way for a teacher to create groups? The easiest way is to get somebody else to do it. So either the admin or the student. So if you're using if it's self-enrollment, if the student's self-enrolling, you can share keys with them, and that can automatically put the students into the groups. occasionally you might need the teacher to manually check and add them. But that's something that often works quite well, maybe in schools. Yeah, and database enrollments. There's, I can't remember the actual name of it, but there was a plugin, group select or self-select or student. I'd have to Google it, but there's a plugin also that lets students just choose which group to join. So that's something that you could have a look at as well. But if it's the teacher doing it, then just manual enrollment. There's also a flat file if you want them to upload, if you want the teacher to upload enrollments as groups, but generally just the manual enrollments I think is probably the most easiest for the teachers. I guess it's what do you mean easiest? Do you mean easiest or quickest? Groups change throughout the year, different assignments, harder for teacher, larger setup to get going with group assignments. Yeah. So yeah, it really depends on how you're doing the group assignments. Thanks, Shane, for the link there, the module choice group. Okay. So as a teacher, you often want to share your learning intentions. So obviously you can do that through labels on your Moodle courses. So having it directly on the course, as I did on when I set up the iMoot courses, that little section at the bottom, which kind of specifically pushes people into thinking about the learning intentions of the presentation sessions. It's not so easy if you're using your Moodle course for a whole year. That will be a lot of different learning intentions to share, but you could have some overriding ones for the whole course, and then maybe each individual topic could have their own learning intentions. You could upload those in a file or include them in the activity description. But it's something really important to have in your Moodle courses, just so that students know what they are expected to get out of the activities. Student misconceptions. So how do we uncover student misconceptions? Probably the quiz and assignments is the most obvious choices for that, including all the reports that go along with the quiz. So there's some nice nice analysis that you can have a look at, including analysis of the question, almost a difficulty rating of the questions. So definitely poke into the quiz reports if you haven't looked at those before. Other ways, it's all standard teaching and learning stuff, so using the wikis or the workshop, or if you've got some questions in your lesson activities. And then obviously once you've uncovered those misconceptions or gaps in their learning, then linking on to other activities that can kind of plug those gaps, which conditional activities again is useful for, or even just feedback from that, from the assignments or the quizzes. So more of a data-driven one, pupil progress, and I'm sure again you've got your own suggestions. So in the chat, if you do have some ideas and suggestions, then just throw them in. But obviously some kind of baseline testing and knowing where your students are at the start of the course, along with their grades in the gradebook, obviously helps you identify the pupil progress, and you can export all of the grades from the gradebook and do some more detailed analysis with that. So something that I used to do when I was teaching would be export the grades from the grade book, and for each particular activity, comparing the students' the student's grade on that activity with their course average. So rather than going back to and comparing against baseline testing, I would compare a particular activity grade to their average, and also put in some formula to kind of standardize and allow for easier and harder activities. And then you start to get a nice overview of whether a student has done better than their average on a particular activity, or done worse. And obviously, the aim is that they're continually doing better than their average, and they're getting higher grades and progressing, and you can reward them for that. But yeah, that involves exporting all of that data to Excel and then some manipulation. And another thing, obviously, especially if we're looking at intervention, is collating grades across courses. So we need some, for that, Moodle doesn't do that particularly well, so we need some customized reports to kind of start to get that data and do something with it. I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat for a second. So Trish is saying no need for them to be separated, just when they need to work with most schools these days. The classes work together if there's an identifying field, and the profile reports can be separated for teachers. Yeah, it's true. True, Trish. Everybody uses Moodle differently, and that's the beauty of it. That it is flexible so people can use it however they need to. So flipped lesson and front loading and small group teaching. Uploading videos into your courses and having that material for the students to have a look at before their next class. And of course, you can do that with quiz questions as well. So the idea, if you're not familiar with it, is that the students almost learn the material before going to your class, and then when you're seeing them face to face, you use that time for sorting out misconceptions and cementing the information. So so you can upload videos. You can, if you're a practical subject, you can have yourself doing demonstrations and all of that kind of thing. And this obviously only works well if the students are doing it, and then of course you can monitor all of that in Moodle when they looked at it, if they looked at it before your class. And getting students to teach each other. So within certain activities, you've got the locally assigned roles option, where you can turn certain students into teachers, or you can play with the permissions for all of the students to give them extra permission. So you can start to get the students doing the teaching as well. Okay, I'm about halfway through, and I'm not doing too badly for time. I might have to speed up slightly. So we're going to do a quick activity. In the chat, can I get you to pick somebody, you might know them, you might not do, and just kind of have 30 seconds or so discussing some of the ideas that I've mentioned. So to do that, if you click in the chat, you can click on the Options tab, and then you get a list where you can select people to chat with privately. So pick somebody from the list, say hi, introduce yourself if you don't know them, and just maybe spend 30 seconds or so, discuss some of those ideas. Is anything useful? Does it give you any new ideas, any suggestions? So go for it. Let's have some let's pause for a few minutes and have some quick discussion about what I've talked about. I'm going to give you another few seconds. I can see Andrew popping some things in chat. Pick somebody, get some discussion going. So, as I said, use that options tab and choose somebody, send them some private messages, get some conversations going amongst yourselves. So maybe just 10 seconds or so.
Vinny, can I ask you a question here via audio as well?
If you would like to. I'm not sure whether I'll be able to answer it. Or actually, can I just get you to hold on to that and ask at the end? I'll finish off this activity first, and I've got another bunch of slides to go through. So keep it, put it on the back burner, and I'll definitely answer it at the end. Okay, so start to throw some of those ideas into the main chat. Any comments? What kind of things have you been discussing? So Andrew's got sometimes people struggle with Moodle supporting face-to-face sessions in high school and good ways to do that. So yeah, anybody got any ideas? Just replying to Andrew's comment there. How can you help to support? How can you help to use Moodle supporting face-to-face sessions in high school? Are there anybody want to throw anything into chat? Any suggestions? Any ideas there? Or anything else that you've been discussing? I know I can see some of you have been. Excellent. Okay, so we've got some bits of conversation going. So yeah, Andrew's kind of talking about workflow of feedback. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's how you design your courses and things like that. It would be good if there were some neat ways to have all of that feedback collated and easily tagged and put into one place, and then linking on with of what the students need to do to, linking on to activities that will actually show them how to improve based on that feedback. Christina's just put in, how truthful are students in the grade prediction choice activity? There's lots of there's lots of studies, and this is kind of also backed up with my personal experience of however many 16 years or so it was as a classroom teacher. Students generally tend to underpredict their grades as a big generalization. And if you saw the keynote yesterday, I can't remember the guy's name, I'm afraid, Hakade, from the Japanese Moodle Association. He was saying that's very true in what they see. And Don Hinkleman was also touching on that. It may also vary from culture to culture, because both of those are teaching in Japan. And it was a cultural thing there. They were saying that students really do under-predict their grades, what they expect to get. So that answers your question, Christina. Okay, I'm going to let that chat run for a little bit, and I'm going to move on to some more ideas. So I'm going to have to speed up this last bit. So gamification, something that you, as teachers, we get into our classes. So neat little things like that. If you haven't looked or used it, you've got the activity results block. That used to be the quiz results block that was adapted to pull in information from other activities. So you can have these leaderboards on your courses. I prefer to use it more with groups, so you can have a group leaderboard on it, or you can have top 5 students or top 10 students. You can also have the bottom 5 or 10 or however many students you want, but I wouldn't really recommend that. Badges for gamification, progression through materials and levels, again with conditional activities, and there's various cool plugins out there for gamification of your Moodle courses as well. Actually, there's I'll stick up my presentation from the mini Moodle on YouTube, so that I did a whole thing on gamification if anyone's interested in that. Discussion, massive part of teaching, obviously. One of the biggest things that you can do to improve pupil progress. So how can we do that? Things like forums, messaging, things like I just did here, getting you guys to have some of those little conversations. Hopefully you did. Hopefully you didn't just switch off and check your email and that kind of thing. And these kind of think, pair, share activities where you give them some time to think on their own, pick somebody, discuss, share it back to the group. All of those kind of things that you can do online as well as you can face-to-face. Just with messaging and or maybe even forums and things like that, you could auto-create a bunch of groups for some having some pair work in forums. And of course, something that's probably not used as much as it ought to be is the chat activity in Moodle. So you can have these live chat sessions like we are in the text chat. Feedback to the teachers on their on how their courses are, how the materials are. Now that the feedback activity is part of core Moodle. Sorry, it's always been included in core, but enabled by default. Yeah, hopefully the feedback activity will get used more and more within Moodle courses. Of course, you could create a school-wide, a university-wide standard teacher evaluation, and when your courses are being created, if there's some kind of automation to that, you can have a template course and have that feedback activity automatically added to all these courses. And various ways there for feedback. Brainstorming, maybe wikis, getting students to come up with wikis. It depends if it's the timing of the activity. So if you set it and expect it to be done over a long period of time, then the wiki is fine, but obviously still only one person can edit that at a time. So maybe if you want some more live brainstorming type thing, then you could embed a Google Doc into your course and just kind of have that live brainstorming going, or again, back to the chat activity. Andrew's just put mind maps for brainstorming, integrating with Google Drive. I'm assuming that's not a typo, and it is mind maps. I've not used that one. So okay, that's my homework. I'll go and check that out after this session. Yeah, Etherpad, Christina. Yeah, I haven't looked at Etherpad for a few years. So Etherpad, for those of you that haven't come across it, is it's open source, isn't it? It's an open source, similar kind of thing to Google Docs that allows that kind of live collaboration. That is, I would love to see that in Moodle. Some kind of, it's a product that's out there. It's open source. There was a way to kind of get that into core Moodle. Okay, onwards and upwards. Yeah, go check out Etherpad. It's cool stuff. So sorting and ordering activities, again, really useful for those kind of lower level thinking tasks, which are obviously important for kind of building foundations. So now we've got the drag and drop question types in Moodle. If you haven't looked at them, play with them. Really, really good. So, and of course, there's all the Hotpot plugins and that kind of thing still ticking along. But yeah, I'd definitely suggest having a look at the drag and drop question types so you can do some sorting and ordering tasks with your students. Open shareable whiteboard space would be good in Moodle too. Yeah, definitely. Peer assessment. So I touched on that slightly earlier. We can edit student roles so that they can create activities and questions and things like that. Maybe in a Sandpit course or maybe not. So that's one of the first things that I did when I started using Moodle. Well, 12 years ago, maybe 11 years ago. Just get the students to create the activities and the questions. So that could be, you could get them to create it on a Excel spreadsheet and do some little manipulation to get it to create some closed text that you can copy and paste to create the questions, or even just change their permissions and get them making questions in a Sandpit area that then you can import into your courses. Get the students teaching each other with forums and obviously workshop activity for the peer assessment. If you've not used the workshop activity, then do it. It's fantastic. I used to really like it in the old iteration, but it was a bit clunky and it would often break and it would kind of be left incomplete, but it would still serve its purpose. You'd still get that peer assessment going. But now it's really, really good. So workshop activities should be one of the most used activities within Moodle. Couple more to go. Giving feedback to students, obviously within the quiz and the assignment and the workshop. There's ways to give feedback to students, but like Andrew was saying, it's really important to think how that feedback is delivered and make sure that it's actionable. And so you've got some concrete things for the students to act on. Again, you can set up those individual wikis with the students. so that you get that student-teacher interaction going. Relationships are a big part of the face-to-face teaching, which is often lost when you take it online. So it's the obvious things, like make sure that the user profiles are complete with pictures of the students and the teachers. Get the teacher to put an introduction on their course, whether it's a video recording or photos and some text, just to kind of help to build those relationships. And it's all standard stuff: timely feedback for activities, getting the assignments marked quickly after the students have submitted them. Again, which is easier said than done, but that's, you know, that prompt marking and the timely feedback, that's, you know, the most important part of teaching, so it needs to be prioritized. Spaced versus mass practice. So that's the idea of your timing of activities, really. So again, timing when some of these activities are released and when the students can access different things on your course. Do you want to present them with everything all at one time, or do you want to have different topics being available at different times? Being able to show their prior achievements, so that could be with badges from other courses, or maybe the Mozilla Backpack to collect all of their achievements from different places and display them in one place. Or again, maybe some pre-testing with quizzes, so that the students are able to display their current understanding. Okay, and that brings me to the end of the kind of content that I was getting across. I'm going to give you some homework to take away with you. So what I would like you to do is to just kind of spend a couple of minutes reflecting on some of the things that I've said. If you want to go back to my presentation as a refresher, if you go back to the main course page that goes along with this presentation, then at the bottom I've embedded my presentation. The presentation I did in Google Slides, and I've published it and embedded it on the Moodle course page. So if you need a refresher or anything, you can go back to there. So what I would like you to do is to actually do something with this. So one way I can use what I've learned is, so thank you very much, Christina. Christina's first. And oh, Andrew, I see, got in there. Can I get people to throw something into chat just as something that they're going to take away with them? And I'll give you maybe just 20 seconds more because I'm going to wrap this up. So we've got Christina saying, one way I can use what I've learned is to have been reminded to think creativity. Thank you very much. Remember the basics. Yeah, and Andrew, that was what I was aiming at with this, is just a real trying to get that solid foundation of ideas that the teachers can use. And we've got a few more. That's awesome, awesome, awesome. So Trish, talk more to the teachers, find out if they're having the same frustrations in our system. Looking more into personalizing the learning flow from Paula, workshop activity from Erin. Gareth to consider all things, thinking of solutions. Okay, I'm just gonna, I'm almost out, well, I'm kind of slightly over really. So I'm gonna, Christina, I'm gonna hang around here for a little longer so that you, great prediction one. Okay, perfect, so I've answered your question. So I'm going to hang around, and if anybody does have any more questions, they can grab me. I thought as the iMoot was a SUSE inspired, I thought I'd put another SUSE quote on the end there. Will you succeed? Yes, you will indeed. 98.75% guaranteed. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending and listening to my thoughts today.
And let me jump in and just say on behalf of the iMoot team, which includes you, Vinny, thank you to you for sharing that great presentation. Awesome.
Cheers, Shane. Thanks, everybody.